So before we get into the video, I'm just going to say up front that this is going to be a long video, perhaps a very long video, but I'm trying to cover like a year and a half of drama with various 4D chess moves and all this side stuff. So even if it seems long, it is relatively short compared to the amount of stuff we're going through. I'm also going to try to provide my what can we learn from this, my analysis, my opinion, that sort of thing as we go through. So that being said, let's just get started on our topic for today. So our topic for today is the PPP Andy Warski Kino Casino drama and what's been going on for like the last year and a half. Now, I find these things very interesting for a number of reasons. On one level, it's just drama, and people always find drama interesting. That's why people watch Dr. Phil. That's why people watch reality TV. There's something about a train wreck and something about people destroying their lives that's inherently fascinating. Beyond that, I find these things interesting from like a sociological or psychological perspective. As you may have noticed, I do a lot of character profiles and analysis of people, and I do find it interesting to watch the development of people's personalities and their lives in real time and kind of see what goes right, what goes wrong. And I do think we can learn some important lessons, and I've definitely learned some important lessons by watching lolcows over the years. Now, should I be paying that close attention to this stuff? Probably not. It's probably a bad idea. It's probably bad for me. But I don't drink or smoke or do illegal drugs, so I have to get my dopamine hit somewhere. So let's just get right into it. So our two main protagonists in this are PPP, aka Ashton, and Andy Warski. So let's try to go into detail about this. So Andy Warski is a long-term Canadian YouTuber / whatever platform he happens to be on. He periodically has all these different shows. He had a show called Subcultured where he looked at different subcultures. He had, I think it was Purple Dragon or something, where they did something. He had an IBS or Internet Blood Sports show. It was kind of the beginning of Internet Blood Sports when they had Sargon and Richard Spencer on to kind of yell at each other. He's done like shock jock comedy. Warski's done all kinds of different stuff over the years. He's most notable for a couple major traits that we'll get into. Firstly, he has a drug problem. There's been speculation over the years how much of it is like fake part of his persona, but it's confirmed and he's talked about it. He used to just snort immense amounts of cocaine. He's also an alcoholic and all kinds of other stuff. Whatever he can kind of get his hands on. And he's frequently lied about this over the years. He gets really upset and defensive if anyone calls him out on it. So that's kind of part one. Part two is, and we'll see this throughout this, Andy Warski is immensely sensitive. And if anyone criticizes him or attacks him or assaults him, he just goes into full-on meltdown mode. A lot of people have said that he's flagged them in the past, and he'll probably try to flag this video. And the thing about that is, and we'll get into this more later, but he's consistently run gossip shows, which are mostly based on ripping people apart, destroying their reputations, spreading rumors about them, playing clips to humiliate them. And if anyone says anything about him, he'll basically have a meltdown, become an alcoholic, ban them from everything, and just kind of cry. And like I said, we'll talk about this more later, but I get that if you're an average person, then like hundreds or thousands of people just shitting on you constantly is going to be hard to deal with. And that's going to be something difficult to take. Even if you're like a YouTuber who just makes history videos or isn't part of the drama sphere, I get that many people shitting on you and calling you like horrible names might be difficult. But if you're going to be running a like drama show that's entirely based upon like calling people pedophiles, trying to ruin their reputation, you got to have thicker skin than that. So that's Andy Warski. So he's been through a number of difficult interpersonal relationships. Basically, everybody who's ever had business dealings with him, he's snaked or they've snaked him. There was Failure. I think his name was Skylar. We had Geek Thulu. He used to be best friends with Ralph, and this is something that I think is kind of open for interpretation. Now, obviously, Ralph is a massive piece of shit, and that's not really the focus of this video. But Andy, during one of his many self destructions, Ralph kind of pulled him out of the gutter and put his career on track and made him co-host of the Kill Stream. So in particular, what like Godwinson has said about this is okay. Even if Ralph is a piece of shit, he did save Andy from complete oblivion, and it is scummy of Andy to go on and make a show that was just entirely based upon tearing him apart. So your mileage may vary. Next, we have PPP, or the People's Populist Press, aka Ashton. His name is, of course, a reference to the People's Party of Canada, which is PPC. Now, I know a bit less about his origins exactly. From what I know, he used to be a youth pastor at an evangelical church. He also used to go across Canada with his partner Surfer and sell water filters and energy contracts and kind of different stuff like that. There's a lot of stories of them like living out the back of a truck as they kind of go across the country. And he came to prominence by launching a crusade against Ethan Ralph. Now, I think the appeal of PPP back then and today is he brought what I think a lot of people felt was a fairly sincere Christian counterpoint to a lot of the degeneracy we see. So he would call out like Ralph and Fuentes and all these people from a Christ is King perspective. Now, obviously, PPP is a troll, and he's always been a troll, and a lot of what he says is kayfabe or irony or that kind of thing. But I think a lot of people were attracted to him because at the core there seemed to be a moral center that drove a lot of his criticisms, and there seemed to be something real there. Even if a lot of what he does is kind of shock jockey or that sort of thing. Now, of course, he came to prominence because he got super drunk and showed his asshole on, I don't know, it was some side project, which obviously like he shouldn't have done that, but that led to Ralph. I think Ralph got him fired from his position at the church and from his job, and then he kind of declared total war on Ralph. And it's just been going back and forth between the two of them for the last couple of years. So everything kind of came to a head last year when PPP got into a massive fight with his roommate Surfer, who he used to be his buddy, where they would go sell water filters and stuff. And I think the experience of COVID with them getting laid off, and then there was the COVID bucks from the government, and just getting stuck indoors. And I get it, because I was in that place too. I got laid off. I had to rely on COVID bucks for a while. It was hard to get a new job. And basically, I think their personalities just clashed. Surfer, I think, probably does have schizophrenia, just from the way he acts. But Surfer called the cops on PPP. He kicked him out of the apartment. And then PPP went and was living in like a cabin in the woods or something with no cold. And he was doing additional videos. And then he disappeared for a while, and Andy got kicked off of the kill stream. And the dynamic duo decided to team up. Now, one of Ashton's ongoing things that he's talked about a lot over the years is he had a campaign against what he called grifters. Now, the term is somewhat vague. I'm not sure if it refers to anyone who makes money online, if it refers to people who are sleazy and they tailor, they're basically chameleons who tailor their opinions to whatever they think their audience wants to hear as a way of soliciting donations, if it's people who fake beg for money, if it's people who outright scam them by promising things and then not delivering on them. the term is kind of vague. My position, and I'm just going to be honest, is I always thought Ashton had a lot of talent, and that he should be trying to make money online. Now, I think there's a difference between accepting donations, having a Patreon, maybe selling merchandise to support your show, and basically just selling out and changing your opinions to whatever your big donors tell you to do. I don't really think those are the same things at all. I've never really had an issue with people making money online. I think the complaint is more like people like Nick Rekieta, who will, with the whole Kick Vic thing, sold a lot of people on that this was a culture war issue. He was like, 100% guys, Vic's gonna win. We're gonna blow out Monica Rial and the SJWs and stuff like that. And then it just turned into a complete and total shit show. Also, I'd put in kind of this category a lot of right wing news outlets who are like, Trump is still going to win, guys. Trump's going to be president next week, next month. And they'll just do this as a way to solicit donations, primarily, and to kind of sell people on this copium narrative. You also have people, I guess you could say, like Alex Jones, who do conspiratainment. So, I mean, that's kind of how I would differentiate that. Once again, if you just do a show and you take donations and you take Patreon or whatever, I don't really see an issue with that. But he and Godwinson, I think, pretty much took the perspective, and I could be wrong, I apologize if I'm wrong, that anyone who makes money online at all was a grifter. So he came back in partnership with Andy Warski, and they launched a show called the Kino Casino. Now, I don't entirely understand what the term Kino means. My understanding is it means cool, but also kind of tacky or goofy or something like that. Like, I think the term originally kind of referred to like weird horror movies from like 60s, 70s, and 80s that were kind of so bad they're good. It's kind of like this weird combination of retro, tacky, and cool. But it's kind of like the term based, wherein it's used in so many different contexts, it can kind of be hard to kind of figure the whole thing out. So PPP came back. He was partnered with Andy Warski. They launched Kino Casino, which was the two of them working together. Ashton has no ability really to do technical things. He, generally speaking, would stream yelling into a cell phone. And honestly, his cell phone streams were better than like 90% of commentary videos on YouTube. Like I said, I think the guy has a lot of genuine talent. I don't really have anything against him personally. I've talked to him a couple times. He came on one of my election streams. I don't really have an issue with Ashton. I just think he's kind of really let himself down. And we'll get into that. Like I said, I don't have an issue with him trying to make money online. My issue is with some of the other stuff, and like I said, we'll get into that in a minute. So he doesn't really have any technical or money making abilities, so he brought Andy on because Andy's like a supreme grifter. Now, I have a lot of issues with Andy. Andy's very much a political chameleon, kind of like Godwinson, wherein he will adopt whatever position or appeal to whatever group he thinks will make him the most money at any particular amount of time. If that's being an SJW, if that's being a liberal, if that's being a libertarian, if that's being like a fake conservative, Warski, I find, will just adopt whatever position he wants his audience to hear. And I don't really have an issue. Once again, I've changed my mind on a lot of things over the years. But I think it's often pretty obvious when someone matures or they rethink things or someone makes a good point and they go through a genuine change of opinion and someone who just does it as a blatant cash grab. There's other stuff about Warski that we'll get into as we go. So they started the show together and they basically do a weekly drama show. They're primarily focused on covering Ethan Ralph news and America First news. So the Ethan Ralph news is pretty straightforward. America First is like Fuentes, Baked Alaska, I think Dalton Clodfelter. There's some other people, Kai Clips, Beardson Beardley. And basically what their show is they gather together whatever the crazy stuff is they did from the past week and watch the clips and make fun of it. And it kind of very much became I don't know, it's not fiction, but it's like they always compare it to wrestling and stuff like that, where there was a very definitive storyline, like Ralph's ongoing meltdown. There was the whole arc with Faith Vickers. There was the child custody battle arc. And you would watch the show every week, kind of like how you would watch, I don't know, a soap opera or something where it would end on a cliffhanger every week to see what was going to happen next. And they also brought in some IP2 stuff and some other things. Now, I personally didn't really have an issue with them covering the same stuff every week because Ralph and Fuentes and stuff would do interesting stuff pretty much every week. And it was cool to like watch the story unfold in real time. So I didn't really have a problem with the lack of content. What often would seem the case is if they tried to do someone else, they weren't particularly informed on the topic, and it would just kind of go nowhere. Now, the thing that wound up happening is pretty early on, there's a very oil and water mixture of PPPs and Andy's fan base. I don't even know how to really describe Andy's fan base. I think they're kind of like libertarian, sort of Coomer, anti SJW people left over from Gamergate. On kind of the one hand, and PPP's fan base was largely like Christian conservatives, but people who were Christian conservatives and also liked drama and video games and stuff like that. People probably more like me is fairly similar to the average of his fan base. And like so PPP would do all kinds of crazy stuff, but he would also deliver sermons about how abortion's evil, about how people are going to hell, about stuff like that. And a lot of people liked kind of that strange mixture of the two. And I think you can see right away how these two fan bases would clash. So Andy is a Coomer. Like whenever an attractive woman comes on or anything, he's always like, oh, I want to bang her. Oh, she has nice tits. And he would just like he just does that, and it's just a lot of people found that really obnoxious. He always talks about his drugs and just his sexual exploits, which he's probably kind of made up. And that kind of strikes PPP's audience the wrong way. It also strikes me the wrong way where Andy takes like a fake conservative viewpoint in order to own Nick Fuentes or own Ralph or something like that. So there's always been kind of a divide there, and a lot of PPP's audience keeps shitting on Andy. So Godwinson, who's like the third man that we're going to bring into this. So Godwinson is an internet troll who's kind of like a combination of the two of them. So he's a British guy, and he periodically will show up, toss a couple hand grenades into whatever is going on online, and then disappear for months or years at a time. He would do drama videos. He'd cover like old internet lore, stuff like that. My issue with Godwinson is that he's a political chameleon. Like, if he's attacking a liberal, he'll appeal to like alt-right or social conservative or Christian talking points. If he's attacking someone on the right, he'll appeal to liberals and like racism and transphobia and homophobia and stuff like that. He'll basically just take whatever perspective and moralize from it that'll make the person he's going after the worst. And more or less everybody who Godwinson's had an association with, he's burned at some point, completely humiliated, and done a video series tearing them apart. I think that's something you'll find with regards to all three of these people, who all their previous co-hosts, most of their previous friends, have become their enemies, which is something they also share with Ethan Ralph. But let's just put Godwin aside for now. He'll become more relevant later. So their show was going, and this is kind of what I find fascinating about Isla. So they were making probably about $2 to $4 grand a week. It's hard to tell American. And I let me see what that is in Canadian money. Or let's be conservative and say they were making about $3,000 American a week, which translates into about 4,000 Canadian dollars, which they would split between them. So roughly $2,000 a week times 52. So they were both making probably about over 100K Canadian before taxes. They also had Gumroad, which was a subscription based service that had some more content on it. I have no idea how many subs that they had on there. I don't even remember if that was in USD or CAD, but that was definitely a couple hundred extra bucks a week. So these guys were making a shit ton of money. Really, all they had to do was just go on air. They had 2 shows normally a week. They had Kino Casino on Friday, and they had the Rake back on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. Their shows would range from being like 2 hours to 6 hours, and they would just have to do that. And they would make more money than I've ever seen in my life, than most people have ever seen in their life. And keep in mind, this is online money. So there's a lot of benefits to working from your home. You don't have to pay for transit, work clothes. There's a lot of working's expensive. There's a lot of additional stuff. Andy's living with his parents, so he doesn't have to pay rent, presumably, or probably food money. So he was making like 110 grand a year working from home. You can also just claim a lot of stuff as your business expenses. I always claim whatever donations people send me in ad revenue. But as part of that, I can deduct like my internet, my cell phone, if I buy any software, if I buy like a new computer chair, a mouse, all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure Warski's deducting all kinds of stuff from the amount of money they're getting. And it's just like, you think that would be a pretty sweet gig. You just have to go on, talk about retards on the internet for like 10 hours a week, maybe make a Gumroad or two, and you just make like stupid amounts of money, like $100 plus an hour or something like that. And you think people could just do that and they'd be happy with that. But it seems anytime you get a show that makes that much money, it implodes. Now, sometimes it's due to external factors. Ralph was making that kind of money and when he was on YouTube, and his channel got banned by YouTube. So, same thing with Sargon getting kicked off of Patreon. That's obviously not really their fault, and that's one reason for the collapse. But in general, what it is the people who are running the shows will just go fucking crazy. They'll get into all kinds of drama. They'll develop a drug habit. They won't be able to do their 10 hours of work a week, and it'll just completely and utterly collapse into madness. And so here they were, making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. The show continuing to grow. There being a lot of goodwill. And Andy Warski, in typically Andy Warski fashion, began yet another violent path of self-destruction. So a couple of the major arcs we have in this was, I think the abortion arc is a big one. So Andy's girlfriend got an abortion. I'm not really clear how involved he was in it, because she might have just done it without even telling him at the time. It's kind of irrelevant, though, how much Andy was involved with it, because in the aftermath, he talks a lot about how awesome it is. He said, and I quote something like, "I'm glad my kid was aborted. It means I have more time for hanging out, playing video games, and watching movies." He wishes more children were aborted, and he did like a song about it, and how awesome people having abortions are. Now, this was, of course, all just irony, bro. He wasn't being serious with any of this. Even though this kind of self-indulgent Coomer attitude is completely in line with Andy's personality, it's in line with whatever political beliefs we can attribute to him, and it's in line with him continually throwing retarded shit out there, getting burned from it, and then crying and kind of retreating back to the nether reaches of the internet. Now, a lot of, once again, the audience, PPP's audience in particular, PPP used to do rants all the time where he'd call abortion the silent genocide. A lot of his viewer base are Christians. A lot of the Kino Casino's viewer base are groypers who left America first because they couldn't deal with the nonsense. And just because they left Fuentes doesn't mean they don't keep to their old views. So a large proportion of the base is pro-life, and they just shit on Andy and just called him a degenerate. They called him a coomer. They said he was a horrible person. And Andy just couldn't deal with it. And he just started blocking everybody and crying and saying how unfair people were to him and how it was all just irony, bro, and none of it was serious. And Ashton defended him on the whole thing and said it was funny and that it was just kayfabe. And this kind of gets us, sorry to do another digression, but this is the concept of the irony bro, which is something they go after Fuentes a lot for. So an irony bro is someone who floats an idea that they clearly believe in and is clearly consistent with everything else. And if someone calls them out on it or they get a massive negative reaction, they try to pass it off as being humor, even though it's very obvious to anyone who has observational powers that they were being serious. So Warski was obviously being serious about it, but when people called him on it, he's just like, it was just irony, bro. It was just irony. So that made Andy extremely upset that people were saying mean things about him, even though they were calling people pedos on their show, like on a weekly basis. There was an infamous stream where they had Godwinson on, where they called another YouTuber named Flamenco a pedophile. Now, my understanding is there is some evidence for this. I haven't looked into it. Just going purely by the stream, they presented no evidence whatsoever that Flamenco was a pedo. It came down to the fact that he had joined some random Steam groups like 3 years ago, and one of the guys in the Steam groups had a picture that was a kid, maybe. It was hard to determine. So like their gotcha moment was that a whole bunch of Flamenco's viewers had sent him friends links requests on Steam and he had just accepted them, and a couple of those people turned out to be like shady, and that was the like big gotcha thing, but they called him a pedo for a long period of time. And even if he was, it still is a really bad look to accuse someone of that. And then that came down to like, it's just irony, bro. And we had a couple salty streams where they're like, oh, it was just not in good faith and stuff like that. So that was kind of the beginning of Andy's downward spiral. We then had an incident where he challenged Ralph to a fight. And they're like, this fight is 100% going to happen, guys. And obviously the fight didn't actually happen. Ralph went to Portugal, got beat up. Keemstar called off the fight. However, Andy's like, I'm fighting someone a lot more important, someone a lot more famous that you're going to care more about. I'm going to fight Salt Pappy. And the entire audience was like, who the fuck is Salt Pappy? He's some like British Filipino TikTok guy. I don't even know why he's fighting Andy, but he's like, okay, Andy's going to fight him. So Andy like decided that he was going to become the next Rocky, and he spent the next like 4 months basically, he claimed in the gym like 12 hours a day. He was like, I'm like fighting 3 people. I'm just getting like big burly guys to just punch me in the face to train me up. And so basically Andy just talked a ton of shit for like 4 or 5 months about how he was going to destroy Salt Pappy, how he was going to become a professional boxer. And all this was supposed to be just irony, bro. It was just kayfabe. None of this was supposed to be taken seriously, even though it's consistent with Andy's inflated sense of self-esteem. Now, as part of this is Andy had no involvement in planning the show or really doing any kind of pre-work. There were weeks where he just couldn't show up because doing a 10-hour show a week and making like $100 an hour, do you guys know how hard that is to balance that against going to the gym? Like he couldn't do it. He couldn't do pre-reading for the show. I mean, most people work like 40 plus hours a week and they're like somehow able to handle that. But the stress of doing the show and then spending the rest of the time playing video games and working out, it started to take a toll on Andy's fragile psychology. Part of that is most people just didn't give a shit about the fight. No one knew who Salt Pappy was. No one cared that Andy was going to fight him. And like every show, Andy would talk about how great his training regime was. Now, here's the thing. If Andy had been more humble about this and said, look, guys, I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm training. I'm going to try to take this seriously. I get that, I don't really know what I'm doing and I don't think I can get into shape in time to really put up that much of a fight, but I'm going to try. I don't think anybody would have really cared. But the fact was that he talked so much shit for 4 to 5 months about how he was going to win. And like the night before, Ashton put out a video saying, oh, Andy's going to win this one, guys. It's going to be a clash of the Titans. And at the press conference, like they were just super arrogant. He's like, I'm going to murder Salt Pappy. I'm going to win this one, guys. He's a fucking pussy. So he got into the ring. He got knocked out in like 13 seconds in like 2 hits. And it was completely humiliating. Now, the amount of money that he actually made is completely up in the air. No one has any idea. It went from like 100,000 to 30,000 to 10,000, and he split it 50-50 with Ashton. Now, if it was if it was $10,000 and he only got 5,000 of it, that means he spent like 4 months training, apparently 8 to 12 hours a day, eating specialty food, hiring trainers, and stuff like that to make $5,000. And it just seems like he probably lost a lot of money on this whole endeavor. I mean, if they're making roughly $100 an hour on Kino Casino, it's literally like 50 hours of the show. It's like 10 episodes of the show. They could have just put on more shows or put on better quality shows or hyped their shows or done something else to make the money. So he just got completely blown out. And then this led to a cope phase where they just disappeared off the internet for like 20 days. They put out this horrible edited video called The Bog Hog, which I've covered previously. And once again, there was just a lot of arrogance. And he was like, I'm the king crap of Turd Bowden. Ashton was like, we gave you guys what you wanted. You wanted to see Andy Warski get beat up. We showed you him getting beat up, etc. So they came back after a month because Andy needed the time off because doing like 10 hours of content a week, which from if what Godwinson says is true, and Godwinson's a steak, so I don't know if it's true or not, but it sounds like something that would happen. So Andy apparently did no show prep. Ashton and the writers of the show weren't allowed to talk to him. They gave him like a brief thing 1 hour before the show started, and he had veto rights over basically anything he didn't want to be on the show. But he needed a long vacation from that. Part of the whole bog hog thing was the original premise. So Ethan Ralph owns a big patch of swampland in Louisiana. So they said that they were going to go to Louisiana and film a documentary on Ralph's swampland. And then they wound up not going to Louisiana, and they went to like a random swamp in Niagara Falls, Ontario. And it's just, I don't get why they couldn't just go to Louisiana. It would not have been that much money. I looked it up. It would have been maybe $1,000 each for plane fare and hotels. And I was actually kind of excited about it because they had gotten a drone, they had gotten all this stuff to like film it, and then they didn't deliver on it. And a lot of people shit on them for that. And it was pretty clear in like the subsequent episodes that Warski was in a downward spiral. Now, a lot of people have shit on Warski because basically whenever they're trying to go through a clip, he makes what's known as a low IQ interruption, where he'll just be like, yeah, man, that's crazy. Or just say something else that's like not helpful or interesting or funny. And he'll continually pause the clip to repeatedly say this. And people just got irritated with it. And they're like, Andy, just stop pausing it. You're not adding anything. And he just got really triggered and upset by the fact that people were calling him low IQ. that people were endlessly mocking him about the fight and saying what a loser he was and how he got his ass kicked and all this kind of stuff. So Andy just went in a complete and utter downward spiral where he was obviously getting drunk on stream all the time. And it led us to kind of the Coke stream where Andy kept leaning down in the middle of the stream. There was a loud sniffing noise, and he would come back and he was just completely fucked up. Sorry, just a side note. The other thing people complained about was donations. I don't really have an issue with them reading donations, but basically, whenever there was a donation, Warski would just yell over Ashton and stop the clip. And they'd be like, Medicare Masochist for $25. Let's fucking go. And it would get to the point where, like, a 2-minute clip would take, like, half an hour to an hour. And I'm not even really exaggerating. Because they couldn't even just put the donations together into one spot. It was just kind of constant interruptions, and the show never went anywhere. So people were shitting on Andy for this, for losing, for their fake trip to Louisiana. So anyway, sorry, so on the stream, it looked like to everybody Warski was snorting cocaine. Warski's well known for his cocaine habit. He's well known for lying about his cocaine habit. And this led to like a breakdown of relations between Ashton and Warski. And Ashton put out all these streams. Godwinson came back and started trolling them. And this led PPP to have like a meltdown. He did like a couple streams basically saying that he loved Andy. Andy was his best friend. He would stand by his man until the end. That he'd place his entire future with Andy Warski. And that Godwinson was a loser who didn't know what he was talking about. And then the Coke stream happened the day after that. And he did a big stream where he's like, I'm not going to take this anymore. Warski's got to get clean. He's got to stop doing drugs. I'm not doing the show again until he gets clean. And he brought a new co-host on with Persnippety or whatever his name was. And Warski like did this really shitty public apology and said, I'm going to leave guys until I get clean. And the cope that they came up with was, and I shit you not, I wasn't snorting Coke, I was snorting boxed wine. There was boxed wine that was under the table, and I would lean down there and pour myself a glass of boxed wine, and it made a noise suspiciously like someone sniffing Coke. He's like, I didn't want to drink on stream because it's not professional, but Warski drinks on stream all the time. Like, I remember when they were doing AFPAC 3, he was doing shots. People were giving him money to do shots. So the fact that it was suddenly an issue that he was drinking on stream when it was not an issue previously, it raises a lot of questions. Like, what the fuck was even going on? But this was the big cope. And then apparently he showed PPP that he didn't have any text messages from his dealer, because that's how it works, apparently. People will use their normal phone to do text messages with the dealer. They won't use a burner phone. To be fair, this is Andy Warski, so he probably would just use his normal phone. He showed him, like, his debit card receipts. He's like, look, I didn't give any money to my dealer. Using my debit card or using, like, financial transfers. There's not like a transaction listed here that says Coke dealer. And it's like, okay. It's not as if Andy could have another bank account or he could be paying in cash and he was doing withdrawals from a separate. It's just like, and Ashton's like, oh, I believe this. It's 100% the case. And so we had like a week where he kept saying, I'm not going to do the show again with Andy. There was this big drama thing where there was a vote on whether or not Andy was fired. Andy got fired. He rebranded his separate channel, the Kino Cathedral. He started doing solo streams again. And then this week, Andy's back. Andy's returned. He somehow got 100% clean. His alcoholism's gone. His addiction to cocaine's gone. He's going to be there. He's going to be sober. He's going to be professional for the foreseeable future now, guys. All that other stuff that happened, that's all behind him. Warski's there now. And there is a video I'd like us to watch now that I think summarizes the last couple weeks very well. And I remember I've watched this a number of times over the years because this was the single best SmackDown of someone I've ever seen. This was such a just obliteration of the person in question. It makes me kind of cringe just how badly this guy got blown out. And this guy is Gator. So Gator was Ralph's best friend for like a decade or more. And he was basically just Ralph's bitch. Ralph would make fun of him on air. Ralph would pay him peanuts. Like when Ralph was making like 20 grand a month, he would give Gator like $100. He would humiliate him on air, stuff like that. And Gator would like spend hours of his life. Apparently he was making like Kiwi Farms digests for Ralph and summarizing what the haters were saying about him. And basically he was, the point of the video is that Gator was the beta male. He was the inferior version of Ethan Ralph, a pill-popping alcoholic who eats, felon who eats burgers out of the trash. And of course, I'm sure you can see the irony is that Ashton has become the beta version of Andy Warski, a retarded Phoenix cokehead who lives with his parents and thought that he was going to undertake like a career to become a professional boxer. And he's that man's sidekick. So let's just watch this video together, and I think you'll see why I brought it up. Okay, let's start this.
There is a man out there of which my audience is most likely familiar, but there may be people who are not familiar with this particular individual about which this video concerns. This video concerns the Gamer Gator, or a Gator as he is known, or the based old fag by his friends, or the fist fucker of children, as he is also known by. He is a man of many names. But in order to give you a sense of what this man is like, the Gator Gamer, there's an illustration, and it's in the title of this video. You know, when you look throughout fiction, because oftentimes, you know, life imitates art and art imitates life. When you look throughout fiction and in reality, there are heroes, and there are oftentimes sidekicks. And there are very cool heroes, you know. For instance, there's Batman and his sidekick, Robin. There's the Lone Ranger and Tonto. There's Captain Kirk and Spock. There's Han Solo and Chewbacca. But the sort of man that the Gamer Gator is, in an illustration, would be the sidekick to Aquaman. The lowest, lamest, gayest, cringiest superhero.
Live streamer on YouTube. Oh, wait. Yeah, I mean, like, you can just substitute Aquaman here for Andy Warski.
Hero out there who's really only got one use, you know, within the ocean. Just like Ethan Ralph has his one use, which is to do mud raking and drama videos and burn himself down with others. In this same fashion is the Gamer Gator. He is so pathetic, so lame, so cringy, so beta, so spineless, so loathsome, so untalented, so uncharismatic, so worthless, that he is the sidekick to Aquaman. He is the sidekick to Ethan Ralph, the Gunt, a man who's already unfunny, untalented, morbidly obese, a criminal, a fraud, a liar, a scam artist, a distributor of child pornography.
I mean, Andy Warski's a drug addict, an alcoholic. He tried to have a man executed in the streets. He was at least complicit in the murder of his unborn child. He snaked every single person that he's previously been involved with. It's just like he's a false flagger, and he massively flags anyone who goes against him. He's a whiny bitch who had like a meltdown and started doing drugs again because people were making fun of him on the internet. And like Ashton, you've become this man's sidekick. You've become this man's bitch.
And he is the servant, the sidekick, the second banana, the fucking beta bitch to the Gunt, to Ethan fucking Ralph, to a man who eats burgers out of trash.
To a man who snorts boxed wine. And even if it was boxed wine, how does that make it any better? Like, dude, you're making $100 an hour. Buy some actual fucking wine. It's not that expensive.
To a man whose only claim to fame is mud raking, making up lies and gossip.
I think the only time I've seen someone actually use boxed wine is at one of the churches I used to go to back when they were still giving out the blood of Christ during Mass, is they would use boxed wine for that just because they had a large congregation and they were trying to keep costs down, which I don't really have an issue with. Because money's tight these days, so that's the only time I've ever seen it being used.
Gossiping about other people like a goddamn woman, like a fucking tabloid, like some sort of National Enquirer bullshit. And he is that man's bitch, that man's sidekick. This is the Gamer Gator. And the Gamer Gator puts up with a lot of fucking abuse. It's not like Aquaman treats Aqua Boy with respect or any shit like that. No. Fucking Aquaman, that fucking Gunt keeps his Gunt and fucking pimpan strong over that bitch-ass Gamer Gator. That fucking Gator Gamer, man. He treats him like absolute fucking shit. You think, if you've watched any of the kill stream,
if you've watched
over the course of its time, he constantly demeans Gator, cuts Gator off, tells him he's cringy, tells him to shut up, puts him in his place, limits the amount of questions he can ask guests, limits his career. When Gator wanted to do his own thing, Ralph didn't allow it. He brought him back and made him his bitch and forced him.
That's literally what happens with Andy Warski's low IQ interruptions. Whenever anyone in the chat or you briefly attempt to criticize him, he throws a hissy fit. He tells you to stop doing stuff. It's very he's like a passive aggressive cunt to you. And it's now he's talking about like when Gator tried to do his own thing, like you tried to do a week ago with Kino Cathedral, and then he brought you back
to be the co-host. When Gator was short on rent, what a generous boss Ethan Ralph was. He loaned Gator $300. A really minuscule sum of money.
When Ashton was out freezing in the cold, what the generous boss Andy Warski did. He cut him in on some of his personal money.
Money when you think of it. And you would think, oh, well, Ralph would just let that go. No, he publicly exposed Gator as having taken that loan from him. Wasn't even a gift of $300. You've done a good job, Gator. You've been so loyal to me. You've been spending hours of your life in Discord and on forums online, on 8chan, trying to defend my good name from the evil, slanderous A-logs. Here's a nice bonus. I know you're struggling with rent because I don't split the proceeds from the show with you, even though you go out of your way to play your gay soundboard. Gator, play the clip. Gator, Gator. No, I'm going to give you a loan, and I'm going to expose you and say you're a fucking deadbeat and a piece of shit to everybody else. And that, I'm loaning you this money, and you didn't pay me back. And the loathsome piece of slime that Gator is, well, he's being abused by his boss and enabling his boss's substance abuse, his alcoholism, his food addiction.
Enabling, does this sound familiar? enabling his boss's cocaine addiction, his alcoholism, his boxed wine addiction.
He actually forgives him, kisses the gunt, licks the boots of Ethan Ralph after being embarrassed and humiliated like that, and still to this day comes on the show. And not only comes on the show,
that's literally what happened. Warski embarrassed himself by being a drug addict who supposedly snorts boxed wine, and you forgave him for all of this publicly after
show, and picks out topics for Ralph and does his gay soundboard for Ralph and fucking defend him all over the place online, you know, but he still worships him and looks up to Ethan Ralph as a god, you know, while he's working at his sad little grocery store job or whatever, barely making ends meet, miserable lifestyle, weighing 400 pounds, pretending he's the epic old fag, pretending like he was on 4chan in 2004. This is Gator's life. He actually forgave
a sidekick to a guy who weighs 400 pounds living in a cabin.
Ralph for all of this and continues to do the program without pay. He does it for free. He's like a fucking Janny. He does it for fucking free, guys. And not only that, he's the perpetual second banana. Anything that Gator has ever tried to do as an e-celeb on his own has failed miserably. Does anybody remember Stop Gator Time? Anybody remember that gay shit? Stop Gator Time. It's Gator Time, guys. Gator Time has never even broke like 4,000 views. There are only like 10 episodes of Gator Time that ever occurred because no one watched it. Nobody thought it was good. It was garbage. It was trash. It was filth. It was the lowest common denominator of failure. And after that, after having his ass handed to him by YouTube.
Now, not exactly, because I actually like Kino Cathedral, but doesn't this kind of sound like what happened with Kino Cathedral, where he did a couple side episodes, made nowhere near as much money, got his ass handed to him by YouTube, and then went back to Andy?
He went back with his tail between his legs and licked Ethan Ralph's filthy gunt crust. Licked it. Suckled at Ethan Ralph's filthy little gunt. Licked his boots. Said, "Oh, Ethan, please forgive me. Forgive me, Ethan. I love you. I love you, Daddy Ethan. I love you, Aquaman. Let me be your sidekick. Let me be your perpetual bitch for all time." And when the kill stream was doing poorly, when it was starting to go downhill, Gator had an opportunity to hijack the show for himself. And
an opportunity to hijack the show for himself. This also sounds very familiar, like when he tried to bring in Godwinson to do the Palace coup, where he tried to do the whole Fire Warski campaign.
Steal Ralph's audience and make a living for himself and start to become a real man, a real boy. I'm going to be a real boy, Daddy. I'm the Gator Gamer. I'm going to be a real daddy. But you know what he did? He bent the fucking knee to Ralph again. His consistency, he is Ralph's V. He is the milk-fed gimp of Ethan Ralph. The milk-fed bitch gimp who suckles gunt milk from Ralph's disgusting, infected, oozing, fucking filthy, fat, obese gunt. This is the fucking life of the Gator Gamer. And it's pathetic and it's fucking sad, guys. And people out there, the only reason I'm making this video is because it's so requested. I don't even want to waste my fucking time, waste my breath talking about this fucking loser. This man who is the beta to the alpha. Ethan, can you imagine Ethan Ralph being the alpha male in any context?
Do you imagine Andy Warski being the alpha male in any context?
It fucking boggles the mind. Not to mention other situations where Ralph demeans the other co-hosts and Gator just goes along with it. When he calls Flamenco an autistic faggot who can't socialize with other people. Mind you, flamenco actually pays money.
When Andy Warski talks about how happy he is that he aborted his child, and just go along with it.
To be on Ralph's show. He pays money to Ethan Ralph to be on the show as the co-host. At least he did for a period of time. I don't know if he does it anymore. And Ethan Ralph embarrassed them all by being a pill-addicted alcoholic. Eating burgers out of the trash.
By being a cocaine-addicted alcoholic who stores boxed wine.
Failing and scamming his fans out of $4,000 to go on a wild Miami vacation where he just drank himself into a coma and produced no content.
That's literally what you guys did. With A, the fight, and B, the wild trip to Niagara Falls that was supposed to be a trip to Louisiana.
And where he did cringy vacation crossovers in Knoxville where he exposed his gunt. Where, he left his recording software on during the pill stream and was exposed as a fraud and an alcoholic and a loser. And
literally exactly what happened during the boxed wine stream.
All of his fans started to leave him. And he had to damage control. And Gator and Flamenco said they would never do the show again.
I mean, you basically said that in the aftermath of the boxed wine stream.
But Gator, the spineless, whimpering, faggot loser that he is, came back, licked Gunt Crease, and said, "It's okay, Ethan. We've got you off the booze and the pills now." Mind you, the guy is still fucking drinking at least 2, 3, 4 days of the week. Is still an alcoholic, no matter what he tells you. Still abuses substances. And that's the reality. And the sad thing about it all is there's a man...
And that's the that's the reality with Andy. Because he came back and was like, "I'm not an alcoholic anymore. I'm not doing drugs anymore."
Who had a shining example that Gator could have followed. If Gator didn't want to be the real man, if he didn't want to be the alpha, if he didn't want to take over or do his own thing or whatever, he should have at least had the common decency to follow Zidane's righteous example, go out for a pack of smokes, and never, ever come back. But no, he's still there 5, 6 nights a week doing a 3-hour show for a man who demeans, degrades him, exploits his labor, his emotional energy to make money, very small amounts of money, and he puts up with it. It's sad, guys. He's a beta, as Jesse Lee Peterson would say. And people sit there and they go, "Well, Ralph, he speaks to thousands." Ralph will say, "I speak to thousands. The show is a success by any metric." There were episodes of the Kill Stream this time last year, about a month ago last year, November, October, that were doing 8, 9, 10,000 viewers a show. Ethan Ralph, when he even gets guests like Jim on, is lucky to break 1,000 viewers on DLive. He's not on YouTube. He doesn't get paid in super chats. He doesn't get paid in real money. He gets paid in Lino, a scam cryptocurrency developed by Chinese scam...
they're on Comfy now, so it's kind of similar.
...artist flimflammers. This is how far he's fallen. The man raised $26,000 for St. Jude's last year. Now, he can't even raise $26 for himself. A lino is what, like 4 cents? If that? And this motherfucker comes around saying he's hood rich, he's this, he's that. He ain't fucking shit. And he knows it. And eventually, the viewership, which is like 500-600 normally on DLive, sometimes I've seen it at 3.
I don't know, this whole thing sounds very familiar.
300-400 when it's a real boring news reading show and it sucks. Like, honestly, it's gonna go to 0. He's gonna have absolutely nothing. He's gonna have a huge hole in his resume. He's going to be known as Ethan Ralph, the guy who beat a cop. He's a felon. He has no future. He has no life.
He's going to be known as Andy Warski, the drug addict, the guy who got beat up by Salt Pappy, the guy who aborted his unborn child, the guy who ordered a man executed in the street, the guy who did the CP stream with Ethan Ralph.
And he's going to end up working at fucking McDonald's or Walmart or at some gas station. But the thing about Ethan Ralph is he has such an ego and he has such pride to him that he's going to put a gun in his mouth and kill himself. And that's the alpha of the show. That's his fate. Gator is his beta.
I mean, that probably how Warski's life is going to lead. He fucks it up finally, and for good. He gets banned off of every platform because of his retardation, and then he either works a minimum wage job or commits suicide. I don't know. That sounds quite likely.
His bitch, the inferior version. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. When you realize that, and if Gator is hearing these words, which I'm sure he is, he has to be having an existential crisis at this moment. And I pray that he does. I pray that he turns his life around, that he goes to school, or he goes and gets a job, or he goes to the gym and lifts weights and loses some weight or something, and tries to get a girlfriend, or does something else with his life, or at least tries to do his own show with his own guests and be his own man. But he never will, because he's a bitch, he's a beta, it's hardwired in his DNA. He'll never, ever, ever be a real man. He'll never, ever find Christ. He is doomed to most likely either become a homeless bum in the street, begging for change, or follow the same path as Ethan Ralph, blow his head off, and burn in hell. And I don't want that for Gator. I don't want that for anyone. But when you have a person who's so hopelessly warped and deranged to be a submissive simp, I don't see much other hope for him. Now, maybe after Ralph goes down in flames and ends up dead or fucking working at McDonald's or wherever the fuck he is, maybe Gator will wise up and he'll find another alpha male father figure.
After Warski dies of an overdose of cocaine. Or no, boxed wine.
To latch on to. But the reality is, Gator sucks so much at everything and is so untalented and is so useless that I don't think anyone would actually take him on other than a person on the same caliber as Ethan Ralph or Andy Warski. And you've seen what's happened to them. Their career circles the drain. It's sad.
He even references Andy Warski in this. This is amazing.
It's pathetic. Everybody in chat knows it. Ralph knows it. Gator knows it. I don't know what else to say. Gator fist fucks children. He aids a child pornography distributor in Ethan Ralph, who did download child.
Warski was part of that. I mean, he's literally referencing the thing his boss did. Let's just go back.
He aids a child pornography distributor in Ethan Ralph, who did download child pornography with Andy Warski. He's admitted to it. There's live stream of it. He's assisted Ethan Ralph in covering up deplatforming people. When Ethan Ralph's biggest moment in his life, and by proxy Gator's biggest moment as well, because Gator's whole existence is serving Ethan Ralph and propping him up. That is Gator's existence. The biggest accomplishment was shutting down Mundane Matt for false flagging people and taking down videos. And they did the same thing to people on Stream Me that Mundane Matt did.
Of course he does that.
They did it to re-streamers of Ethan Ralph's content. They did it to people that were making fun of Ethan Ralph. And you bet your fucking bottom dollar, these faggot motherfuckers who talk about how people cry in the hug box and can't handle criticism, they will flag this video for bullying and harassment like the little bitch boy faggots that they are, try and get my video taken down and my channel have a strike. Because that's the sort of loathsome losers that these
Which is exactly what Warski
fuckers are. And you'll watch and see, like all my other videos on Ralph and Gator and the whole fucking retarded crew, this shit will very quickly be flagged, go age restricted, and then it might be taken down and struck because of the new terms of service. But you know what? I don't give a shit. Fuck you, you false flagging pieces of shit, you hypocrites and you losers. Honestly, what does it profit a man, Ethan, if he gains a few super chat lemons but loses his soul? You know it doesn't profit you very little. You know it profits you little because your bank account has been dwindling over the last year. Soon it's going to be zero. Your viewership's dwindling. You have these sad little blood sport debates trying to relive the good old days, but the shit's still boring. Even when you have a blood sport show, it's not even good. That's the truth. That's the truth. And I can't even watch your show day to day. It is so boring and so cringe. And everybody knows it. And that's it. That's the bottom line. You're boring. You're irrelevant. The only reason I talk about you is because people on this channel like it. And I'm a man of the people. And I give them what they want. It is what it is, pal. I know you're going to come here. You're going to get salty. You're going to cry. You're going to spurg. You're going to rage. It is what it is.
I actually forgot that he referenced Warski. He shit on Gator for aiding and abetting a distributor of child pornography. His words, not mine. And he directly references Warski in that. So, what can we learn from this whole thing? I think the ultimate lesson for like all two of you who made it this far is the reason that the people who make that kind of money always self-implode is because only the kind of people who behave in a certain way, who are obsessed with drama, who undergo like self-destruction on screen every like 5 minutes. So the only kind of person who would make the kind of money that they were making online, with some exceptions, is the kind of person who would self-destruct, who can't handle criticism, who can't handle it when people are fucking with them. And I think that pretty much sums it up. It is very much gaining the world or a couple $1,000s in super chats while losing your soul, while losing your integrity. And I have no issue with Ashton making money online. I think he should have been doing it as his job for a while. But this is what he used to say a couple years ago. This is one of the most brutal takedowns I've ever seen. And virtually everything in this video applies to him now. Even the exact timeline of events with him leaving and coming back and there being a wine stream instead of a pill stream. It's like poetry, they rhyme. So I hope Ashton gets better. I just kind of wanted to cover this because it's fascinating. Because the whole thing is just such a fucking shit show. And it is interesting to me to see people fall apart in this way. And people like it whenever I do lolcow videos. And I think I'm more fair about it than a lot of people. And I think I'm less of just kind of an uncritical A-log. So I hope they both get better. I don't think Warski's going to get better. He has no like moral center. He has no direction in life. He probably will end up either dying of an overdose of alcohol or coke or committing suicide when his internet career finally reaches its inevitable conclusion. I just hope Ashton can get his shit together, but what are you going to do? As he likes to say, in the immortal words of the greatest philosopher of our age, Darkside Phil, it is what it is, nothing I can do, but I digress.